We are going to give you a little preview. This week in Sabbath School, Gary Kent came in. He is here from Australia. We're going to spend this next week doing some filming around Texas, North Texas anyway. And you've heard us talk about Gary and the incredible journey before, but just in case you haven't had a chance to find out who he is, here's a little video that um, gives you just a quick idea of what Gary does.
In a world full of wonder, mystery, and meaning, discover the stories that shaped our past, witness the beauty of creation, and uncover the truths that inspire the soul. The incredible journey takes you across time and continents, exploring the events, places, and people that shaped history and faith. From ancient civilizations to modern reflections, from the depths of nature to the heights of spiritual insight, each episode weaves together inspiring stories, history, archaeology, nature, and faith, revealing how they intersect with the real world. This isn't just a journey through the world, it's a journey of the heart. Join us for the incredible journey.
So yeah, anyway, it's fun. He's here. He told stories in Sabbath School, and we're going to do some stories and filming around here. One that I'll tell you a little bit about now. He'll obviously do a much longer story, but it's something I found out I didn't know, having been here in Keene, Texas for how long have we been here? 5 years. 5 years, and turns out that Keene, Texas, was the stick horse capital of the world at one point. Who knew? Yeah, Doc Hausinger was the guy's name. He had been successful at, I think it was a canning tomatoes and canning vegetable fruits and stuff. And he came up with a method of, making it, really fast and cheap to do, and made a lot of money. Sold to a big corporation, bought him out. This is back in the 40s or 50s, I think. And anyway, 43, he had, nothing to do. He was retired at 43 because he had sold his company for lots of money. And anyway, some friend of his told him about a little toy factory that was in Keene, Texas. And he and his wife were actually driving through, and they were on their way to vacation. And they passed through Keene. He stopped, he saw it, and that was about it. And they went on to vacation. And then a year or so later, they were coming back to Keene for camp meeting. And while he was at camp meeting, he found out that the guy that owned the toy factory wanted to get out and wanted to sell. And Hausinger kind of looked at it and thought, wait a minute, what I used to do for canning, the machinery I had, if I adjusted a little bit, it would work for these stick horses. And so he bought the toy factory, and he brought in his machinery and he modified it a little bit, and all of a sudden he had a manufacturing company doing these stick horses. And they were doing it cheaper and faster than anybody else could in the 1950s, basically. And it was interesting because what he could have done at one point was the stick and the horse's head, would all be automated, and putting the horse head on the stick could have been automated and everything. But he specifically chose not to use the cheap horse head, but to use a hand-stuffed horse head that had to be made by hand and then put on the stick, just so he could employ students that could then work their way through college at Southwestern. And so it was the business decision would have been use the cheaper horse head and do it all automated. But he specifically chose to do it with the higher quality horse head that was hand stuffed, so he could employ student labor and help kids pay for their education, which was his big claim to fame. And anyway, I remember as a kid having one. They had names too, like I don't know, Riding Bronco and Tall in the Saddle, and Feathertail or something like that. It was they all had little names on the horse heads, and um, anyway, we're gonna do one of those stories, and kind of interesting. But yeah, they were. If you had a stick horse in the 50s and 60s, it most likely came from Keene, Texas, which who knew? But anyway, Miranda was talking earlier about a Bible verse where Paul talks about seeing through a glass darkly, and Paul is talking about what we see now is not reality. We're seeing things in a mirror, basically dark mirror at that, a bad mirror. And you may have heard this, the mirrors back in Paul's day, one, were notoriously bad. They're just horrible. Hardly you could call them a mirror. And two, he was saying a bad mirror in his day. So a bad mirror in his day was really bad. And he was saying that's what we see when it comes to seeing spiritual realities. And it just made me think like the stick horse, riding a stick horse as a kid, what is that like compared to the reality of riding an actual horse? They're so far apart from each other. And it made me think about, that's kind of what Paul is saying, what we're seeing in the spiritual reality and the love of God in this mirror that we see now is not even close to the reality of it. Which then again reminded me of a story that Miranda had told before that we've used before, but it made me think again about like, oh, that is a really good illustration of the power of love.
So this happened probably, we've been here 5 years. I think it happened at least several months before we moved down here. And so we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I had taken Aspen to the mall. And we had just walked into the mall, and this middle-aged man walked up to us, and he said, I'm here at the mall today to pray with people. Do you want me to pray with you? And I said, well, sure. And so we chatted for just a little bit, and then he prayed for us, and then he had this bag that he pulled out some stickers, and they said, I am loved on them. And he gave them to us. And so, I stuck them into one of those little zip pockets that you got in the back of your purse, and just kind of left them there. And so then, we moved, and at some point in time, I changed purses, and I hung the old one up in the back of the closet, and it hung there for probably 2-3 years, and then I'm cleaning out the closet, and I'm thinking, wow, I really should clean the trash out of that purse. And so I was cleaning out, old receipts and such like that had been left in there. And then I unzipped that pocket, and I found those stickers, and I remembered that. I was like, oh, that was fun, and so I thought, well, what do I do with the stickers? So I just put them on my dresser, and I thought, when I look at those, I'll just smile. And so that's what happened for a little while. I'd see them every now and again, and I'd smile about that, until one day I looked at it, and it was an entirely different experience. I looked at them, and all of a sudden, the presence of God just showed up. And it was a love that was so intense that it felt as if I had never experienced love at all before. And it just put this deep desire for God in my heart. And I felt like I never wanted to sin again, ever. If I'd have been tempted within those few minutes that I was experiencing that, it couldn't have tempted me with anything. I just wouldn't have wanted to touch it or go anywhere near it. And then also, it was just, the presence was so gentle, and just a sweet, gentle presence. And I was just thinking, wow, I could live like this all the time. But of course, eventually it dissipated, and life went on and such. But that was certainly a different reality.
Yeah.
Than the one we're used to living every single day. Sure, we can have a desire for God, but that was such a deep, deep desire.
Yeah.
We can want to not sin, but the odds of that happening is, yeah.
And it just made me think of that text. Paul was saying now we experience this through and see things glass darkly, but there's moments where we have experiences like that that are like, wow, imagine living in that all the time. And is that a preview, kind of a moment of what heaven's like, or what what God's real desire for us is to be like, this is what I want for you all the time, you know, and being in that place. And so, you know, just kind of made me think, you know, the stick horse versus the actual horse experience, and seeing through a glass darkly, and like experiencing that kind of presence of power of love, and how it can change and transform everything. And but it's real, and that's what, you know, God's reality is, and hope and desire for us is. And you know, I thought that was good to remind ourselves that that's reality. What we live in most of the time is a dark reality that, you know, hopefully one day we can break through into the everlasting light and power of God's love. So that was it. All right. So, yeah, again, this whole next week, we're going to be out filming all kinds of stories with Gary Kent and The Incredible Journey. If you haven't had a chance to look his YouTube channel up, do that. There's tons of stories out there. If you want to see one that we worked on, I think I told you this already last week or so, that the story about the car going across America we filmed here in Nashville, and Aspen actually has some footage she shot that's in that episode, and more to come.